Hello, everyone. Very, very welcome to the third episode of our Road to the Metaverse Executive Series, starring Ryan Peterson, our Vice President of Unity's Accelerate Solutions organization. My name is Jeff Hanks. I'm the head of marketing here at Unity for our Digital Twin and Accelerate Solutions business. As a reminder, this series is intended to share with you some of our thought leadership around what the metaverse means, what the industrial metaverse means, what digital twin means for all different types of business. We've done 2 of these episodes already. The first was focused on very high level, what does the metaverse mean for business? Our second episode interviewed and spoke with Lynette, the CIO of the Vancouver Airport Authority, and talked about what the metaverse and digital twins mean for large facilities. Today, we'll be looking at the other end of the metaverse, specifically e-commerce, brands, and Ryan has a very special guest that he's going to be introducing to talk about that. Before we get started, let me go over some of the housekeeping for the talk. We will be spending about 40 to 45 minutes presenting to you. The last 15 minutes will be Q&A. Please use the Q&A button at the bottom. Type in your questions. We will cover those in the last 15 minutes of the talk. We will be providing a recording of this on demand within the next few days after this session is finished. So please look to your email for that. It will be shareable so you can share with other folks. With that, let me introduce Ryan Peterson, the head of Unity's Accelerate Solutions team, Unity Vice President, and one of our thought leaders on all things metaverse. Ryan, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jeff. Let's get this right. Yeah, looking forward to having great guests today, but talking about brands in the metaverse, B2C, and as I talked about in our last episode, really it's going to affect all industries. And we talked about, it was really great to have Lynette on, talking about the industrial use cases, how can we use it in an airport or manufacturing, how to leverage AI and simulation. But what's really interesting is definitely how we're reimagining consumer interactions, whether it's a live entertainment, or I'm going to a retail, or just interacting with brands. We think there's just like a whole new field of opportunities. And what's really exciting is, well, I think the next couple of years, there's going to be a whole new range of devices and technology that have been quietly probably invested in over the number of years. I think you're going to really reimagine and reinvigorate consumers' demands, and where ideas that we had, and I just did a presentation with a client, is that, ideas that we maybe had, say, look back in 2016 and 14 and 15, when the first Oculus came out, we had these massive machines of $5,000 supercomputer and these kind of devices. Well, now we're going to be more, consumer minded, cheaper devices, but some of those ideas probably just didn't have the audience, but now the audience is going to start to materialize. And I think it's just really interesting to see that the maturity of technology is that we've had the mindset, but now we're going to have access to this whole new range of consumers. And frankly, this whole new body of work. I think the really exciting piece that I like when I talk to my team, and right now I'm actually sitting in our Copenhagen office, and Copenhagen is very special to Unity. This is where we were originally, the startup was founded with our founders. And you can just talking to our engineers, you can see the excitement as they see that hundreds of millions of people are going to be joining this whole new field and working from this 2D kind of non-interactive, these dynamic environments. And really, I say it's a new palette of work, whether you're a interaction designer, a 3D artist, or just an engineer, be able to express yourself with this technology. And we have this, I look at my kids these days, as they're 8-year-olds building massive Minecraft worlds, and you're going to see them going through things like Roblox and other types of platforms. And I just can't imagine what they're going to be doing when they're in their 20s and on. And we have this whole generation. I think the metaverse set minds and their expectations of how they interact with brands is going to fundamentally change. And especially around the world, hundreds of millions of people are kind of interacting with these magical places that are being created. And brands are going to have to reimagine what is their relationship with them in this new metaverse and digital environment. that's why I'm really excited today to have Tim Dillon, who's a Senior Vice President, Real-Time and Virtual Worlds at Media Monks. You know, spending 2.5 years within his current job, but really spent the last 2 decades exploring the areas of interactivity, immersive content, emerging tech, and with consumer brands across the whole spectrum of different clients, working with the likes of Coca-Cola, Vice, Google, all around. And so I have to say, we did a little planning show, and I think we could have talked for hours. So we only have 45 minutes. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Tim here and let him take it away.
Hey everyone, nice to see you, and thanks for the intro, Ryan. Really appreciate it, and thanks Unity for the invite to the session. Really great to join. I'm going to just fire up some slides here to show you what I want to see. All right. Let me just full screen this so it's at its prettiest. All right, hope everyone can see this okay. I wanted to jump in just at the start, thank Unity, as I already said, and just do a little overview of Media Monks. For anyone who doesn't know us, let me back a little bit here and see a wider view. So Media Monks is currently a couple of decades old. As Ryan said, I've been in the company working in the virtual world and metaverse and innovation space for a few years now. We're a global agency and production partner for a long list of clients and brands around the world, around 9,000 people in 30 countries. So, you know, point being, we have a wide view. And what does that really mean? That means, it means a little humble brag in this case of, yes, we're the #1 in digital in many different ways. In web, we're working in innovation, and I won't spend too long on this bragging, but yeah, we're #1 in things like social and how to extend digital experiences. And what does that really mean? It means future-proofing digital experiences. Everything you're seeing here is a taste of the type of work that we're doing across these different areas. Really exciting to working at the forefront of where brands and gaming and as we are talking about for this session, what we call the metaverse and where we're going with that come together. And so today I wanted to talk through a few examples of that, but just to set the table here, these are the ways we like to look at the world through new tools and technologies, real-time engines like Unity and Unreal and many others are a big part of our tool set. Working on avatars and some of the projects here, I'm gonna show you different examples of through the next 10-15 minutes. I'll race through here so we can get through a whole bunch of stuff. And really that sets a new mindset, or it has an effect on what the expectations are for audiences, for brands. And so that's something we're really focused on at Media Monks is, what does this mean to year to year, how this is shifting, what we're calling the metaverse, how is that appearing? That's really a collection of different technologies and different content bubbling up in different ways and actually shifting people's behaviors is what we're seeing. And so we're in real time following those trends and bringing them through. And actually, I wanted to talk a little bit about metaverse and Web3 and what we're all seeing emerging. And there's a few things here that we're talking to brands about often. This is one of them, wanting digital to be ownable. That's a big topic, as I'm sure everyone on this call is hearing about. And not just NFTs, not just sneaker drop culture, which is what this reference is, but also what does that mean to be ownable? Are we redefining what ownable means in terms of who has the source files for things, the assets? Is a brand giving away something that they wouldn't have done before? And actually, can you participate in something in a way that you couldn't before? We find that really interesting. Wanting digital to be experiential. This is a big theme this last 2, 3, maybe even 4 or 5 years, but it evolves all the time. And I think this means, what does it mean to be experiential in this content as it evolves? Does that mean experience economy? People want to have more experiences in various hybrid forms, whether that's virtual concerts or AR out there in the real world. And now more and more seeing people spend a lot of time in virtual platforms. And lastly, wanting things to be meaningful. So nice quote here from Riot, who we work with a lot and we're huge fans of. They've been deep into the space. Obviously, it's in their DNA to be in building IP and fantasy virtual worlds. And they have a good quote here about League of Legends being a meaningful life pursuit, which kind of sums it up, that this is becoming 100% of people's interest, not a side interest. All right, so just to pause for a second and talk about learnings. I think part of why I'm here today for this session is to talk a little bit about brands and learnings and what's working and what isn't working. So this is something that we see through our work, and I'm going to show you 10, 15, maybe 20 examples over the next 10 minutes. And this all applies to that in terms of, number one, keeping it entertaining. Entertaining is a loose word, but what we really mean here is engaging, gamification, having the right tactics so that when we are in these virtual worlds and extended worlds, that things feel like they've been thought through and the user experience is right. The second one is more important now than ever, providing value. And this can mean different things. We're redefining value in a way right now in terms of metaverse spaces and Web3 spaces through ownership that we already talked about, but also through, what does value mean? Is it because you're going to a space to actually get a useful experience? And it's a good antidote to a lot of experiences that are feeling PR first. And that's number 3, which is, maybe the third pillar here to the important 1 and 2 is, yes, things should be buzzy and talked about and start a conversation. And the way we're tackling that Media Monks here is trying to make that a cultural conversation and adding it with 1 and 2 here so that it's not PR for PR's sake, All right, so jumping through to some examples. This is an amazing project that the team over here at Media Monks and our larger family, Jam3, worked on for Adidas. It's called Oswald. It's an avatar project with Ready Player Me. If you guys don't know Ready Player Me, I'm sure you do, but it's an amazing startup working in the avatar space, doing great work to allow interoperable avatars travel around 3,000 plus games now, I think, and growing. And we worked with them and Adidas to bring a high level of craft to avatars. So this is a good example of where we're bringing design and 3D and product, and also a lot of creative ideation and strategy work up front to come bring these ideas together. And actually, this is sort of an extension of a whole bunch of work we're doing around fabrics and 3D avatars and how to bring the fidelity of real-time design and rendered, but real-time being a really important part of that, through to a whole bunch of different spaces. And you can see a few examples of that here. And not to get too technical, this is probably the most wireframey slide I'll show you guys today, but it's an overview here of the types of conversations we're having around how do all these tool sets come together? How do we take clothing, fabric, mocap, animation, design, real-time render, bring it all into a project? And this might be a good example. We worked on a great project last year where we built out, where we built out a project with Post Malone and built everything out in real time. But the aim being to get to a really great high quality render for a virtual concert, but using real-time tools and design tools to build out the likeness, work through all the animation and get to probably what would be a longer show than we could have done otherwise. So innovating in terms of efficiencies, I guess, in that creative mix. All right, changing tactic. I'm racing through here a bit because I want to get through a whole bunch of different stuff to show you guys. This is a different project we worked on a couple of months back. Really proud of this one. Our team brought to life a invasion of the metaverse for Duolingo. Duolingo is a great brand to work with. They have a really great sense of humor and they embrace all their memes. And so that's the type of brand that is adventurous and said to us, you know what, if we wanted to invade the metaverse, how would we do it? So our response to this was to create a game jam, give assets to Roblox users, build a whole bunch of games, 20 plus games, bring that together in a game hub, and then also extend out to a virtual world such as Decentraland and go guerrilla in that space. And as you see in the middle here, pop up billboards and go to users where they are. This was really successful. We're definitely looking to repeat this type of tactic again. This was a big success for us earlier in the year. We worked with Logitech. They already have an award show they sponsor called Songbreaker Awards, as you can see. And during the pandemic, thought, you know what, let's extend what we're doing with virtual concerts. And so we took on that challenge, worked with Gail and Lizzo and the whole team and put together what was one of the first award shows formats that was programmed as a space, a city space that you could hang out in, which was fully gamified, and also a programmable show that was happening over a week, multiple times. So this broke records and was great fun to work on. I'm going to race through a whole bunch of these now so you can see a little bit more of an overview of the work we're doing. We work closely with Meta and the NBA for a few years now, and we're always elevating what we can do in these spaces. And this is a good example where we both had a Women's History Month interview moment during the NBA run, where we brought together an interview live in halftime. And then separately, we also created an area called the NBA Lane, which is a gamified space for celebrating the finals and a hangout space. And so this is just the start, actually, of a whole range of work we're doing in these areas with Horizon and NBA. This is a totally different type of project. We want to talk a little bit here about experiential. So those previous platform projects were more virtual worlds. Next couple are more experiential. We worked with Crypto.com, creating a kinetic installation in Miami with Formula One. So this is data visualization in real time. There's NFT enablement here. And then in a physical space, our experiential team builds out the physical side of this and deals with all of the UX and design needs. And in a similar way to this work we did for NYC NFT, the big conference that happened earlier in the year in New York. Obviously, we worked with Cooltopia, with Cool Cats rather, for Cooltopia. And this was a big experiential build out. What was great about this project from a metaverse point of view is it was gamified and there were different ways to visit the space, to play through the space and play to earn and unlock NFTs, as well as having a ton of brand and design elements. So there were a number of projects we did at NFT New York, and this was one of the big ones that got a lot of attention. All right, different again. So I wanted to show a range of different projects today. This is a AR storytelling project we did for Anne Frank and Anne Frank House. So the museum based, more about learning, more about exploring. Challenges here, obviously with AR, are how do you bring all of that content and design and user experience together in the right way. I'm really proud of this one, and it's picking up a lot of interest out there. And this is a different style of AR project where we worked with Samsung and their Dream Ground around the SoFi Stadium here in Los Angeles, where I'm sitting, and took on the challenge here of bringing together different aesthetics. This has, as you can see, a little bit more of a 2D feel, illustration feel, which can sometimes be overlooked in AR when we just go straight for a 3D look. And so bringing together different AR looks in a physical space was really great. And this is a awesome project we did with Verizon and a brand called Go Noodle. If anyone here listening has young kids or just loves kid shows, then you may have come across Go Noodle, who are a big a pandemic kind of success story where they were entertaining kids as they were before and during. And so this is one of their characters, Terry, Coach Terry, and we brought him to life in real time. And this was a mocap character interacting with a live action XR stage-based character, and then broadcasting out to classrooms as in real time and using some overlays in that feed to have interaction. So this is the type of brand placement work which we really want to extend into and bring characters out of their world into new spaces. All right, last one, and then I think I'll stop there because I'm probably running out of time. But this is a great project work with Jack Daniels and the Shoe Surgeon. So this is the Shoe Surgeon space all mapped out as it would be pretty much in real life, and then adding fantasy elements. And this was browser based. It also had different fantasy elements dropped in and AR elements. And so we were able to work with a kind of a collaboration there of a mainstream brand like Jack Daniels and a culture influencer like the Shoe Surgeon, and bring that all together in one project. All right, so I'm going to stop there. So we've got some time to talk with Ryan, but hopefully these examples were a good level set for some of the things we're doing at Media Monks. Appreciate it, everyone.
Awesome, Tim. Thanks for that. I think we'll after once you will one of my first questions, which I think is really interesting. We talked about a lot in my first episode, is like where to start. And you mentioned like Roblox and Decentraland and things like Sandbox and VR Chat. Like there are some like established platforms. And how do you kind of work with clients on like where to start and experiment with some of these almost exhibitions, activations in these new worlds?
Yeah, it's a good question. As you'd imagine, it starts with the conversations with the brand. We put together teams of creatives and technical directors and game designers, and attack the briefs, but they're not always coming in as briefs. Sometimes they're coming as ideas, and then we're together collaborating and figuring out where to take things. So sometimes it's brief, sometimes it's not. But yeah, we start with putting together the right minds, and then look at the questions. Okay, what does it mean to take a brand into one of these spaces? You know, that's usually the starting point. And is there a moment, a cultural moment in the calendar? Is it, like you saw in some of the examples I gave, is it an award show, or is it a longer endeavor? Is it more about actually building on something over time and starting somewhere? So this year, 2022, we've seen a lot of conversations around, okay, where do we start? You know, and last year and the year before, from 2020 onwards, as this metaverse trend, as we talk about it, has been emerging. And so I think the question we've been answering a lot is, okay, where do you start? But always with that longer view of, okay, if we opened a virtual space, or we start down this augmented reality project, can we build on this? Can we do more on it? You know?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's like, where do I start? And but even the different industries that are coming to you, like I have there's like multiple banks that I've lined up with meetings coming to the future, and banks and metaverse, but they're experimenting on new ways to engage with their customers. And I guess it'd be interesting, where do you see, like, what type of industries are kind of coming to your door with a purpose in the space? Like, oh, we have a vision, or is it still very experimental? It's like, we need to know that we need to be in this space. Tell us how. Like, what's the difference between those maybe two aspects?
Yeah, that's right. It's very much our job, or I see it as my job, is to meet people where they are on this road, no pun intended, road to the metaverse. Meet them where they are. And actually, you're right, like some fashion and luxury and apparel brands have been thinking deeply about this. And so we'll knock on our door and say, hey, we're already well down the road here, and we want to talk about these types of projects. What do you think? And then there'll be lots and lots of product brands, you know, whether that's CPG or automotive or even a TV, film, marketing, you know, kind of more of a live show. Music is another big one. These brands and entities will come to us and say, where do we start? So that's that. And so we have, I think, an important step to manage there in terms of education, whatever that is. It's not always just straightforward to say, oh, this is just a metaverse project. Actually, sometimes projects come in and you're like, actually, no, this is more of an experiential project with metaverse elements, or this is actually a social campaign or a film campaign, but actually it's sort of metaverse adjacent, for want of a better phrase. So we see the short answer is we see all industries right now, which we're really happy to see. Everyone's interested in this because they see it as a way to test and learn. And I think more and more of our clients are seeing this as potential incremental revenue too.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, about my first episode, we kind of talk about being blockbustered. So you didn't invest, and then you just, by the time you realize you have the aha moment for your business, it's too late. And is that a mindset that a lot of companies are coming in with, in terms of, you talk about incremental revenue, but it's more than just brand awareness, it's a whole new economic opportunity.
It is, it absolutely is. And I think there's a few questions there right out of the gate, which are often, are we, if we put ourselves in the brand seat, are we as a brand ready to move into these new spaces legally, creatively, or is there more conversation that needs to happen internally? And then it depends, it depends who the brand is. Is it more native to them anyway, or is it something where they're actually stretching? And I've been surprised on the types of brands that we've been working with and clients that have taken that jump versus others that haven't, that have said, you know what, we're going to wait 6 months and hang back here. And then actually in some cases, we're working with brands that have already done 6, 7, 8 projects of these types and are now starting to move past that curve and say, well, hang on, we've done some of this already. We're looking for that extra value and that extra meaning now that isn't just the test and learn PR cycle of this, So you actually do have, I think at this point, at the end of 2022, some brands out there on that top 20 list moving beyond. They're the front runners,
Yeah, and extending leads and positions, because I think there is like a lot of positioning going on, even between, and someone commented, like the Web 2 players are like investing heavily in the space and don't want to miss out. And it's like knowing when to kind of move into the space. And I guess wouldn't mind getting your opinion, like on NFTs, crypto. You even showed it, so I'm gonna open up the subject. But do you find like people, or has that been, we had a big kind of explosion and then crash, but it seemed to be, I mean, I hear it's integrated and people really still thinking about it as an aspect of, digital ownership is part of a strategy.
Yeah, I think that's right. And we see this, and I see this as a big roller coaster of a ride we're on. And that's been true for the last 20 years, all the innovation areas I've been working in. Everyone here and a lot of people on this session probably remember the VR boom from 5-6 years back. And then before that, the big digital push around .coms going back to when I started out in the industry in early 2000s. So we've seen some of this before, but it changes and it evolves and actually improves, I think, as it goes. So I think our view as Media Monks is that digital experiences is table stakes. This is happening. What version of that happens is interesting. And certainly crypto, NFTs, it's early, NFTs is early. There's a public opinion kind of PR battle. Obviously, we're all seeing going on out there. Some people love it, some people hate it. That's okay. Like that's true for a lot of things out there. So that's just kind of the weather, of the innovation space we work in. But certainly, we see things like Meta and Zuckerberg and all these types of news stories out there. And we're big Meta fans. I think I give props to that whole team for really pushing through all of that PR noise and just getting all of that work done. It's going to be really interesting to see, as well as Roblox and Fortnite and all these things, how they bubble up.
Yeah, and I do agree. It's fascinating. I mean, I don't like Unity. We're actually fans of everyone you just talked about, because it's an area for where more creators are happening. It's like that's where the innovation. And I'm going to quote you the weather of innovation space. I mean, that there's something about that because it does come in storms, even in our own company. Like, we're working on what? But that's the stuff. It's about experimentation. I call it being on the front edge of creation. And so I guess it'd be interesting. There was a great article just recently I read about, like, 30% of like agencies' business will be in some sort of metaverse enabled space. So really, I talk about like rethinking and retooling your own workforce. Do you see that? You talk about game designers and transitioning UI UX, like it's brand new field. Like, how is Media Monks, or you think the different agencies, how are you and your industry going to have to transform for this work?
Yeah, that's been an ongoing evolution for a while, and Media Monks has been in a good position in that regard, because I mentioned the VR boom from 5 years ago. Moments like that and incremental moments have helped get companies like us at Media Monks ready for real time. So hiring more 3D artists who are real time and traditionally 3D savvy and VFX and 3D craft generally. But as you said, game designers and UX and user experience are really important to specifically this virtual world building, right? Like they're such a pivotal part, and having the right mindset. But it doesn't just stop at game designers, it's everyone in the process, the producers, the project managers, the whole team needs to be working iteratively. And that's with brand projects where the budgets aren't AAA game budgets. They sometimes can be huge, but they're often testing and learn budgets of, okay, let's do this for this 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month. It's we're seeing more and more projects run into the many months and larger phases. Typically, brand projects are smaller launches. So it's our team's job to figure out how to make the most of those budgets and those schedules. And so that's where we've got it down to an art, I think, which is propose the most ambitious ideas you can and get as much creative and game design in there as possible, but don't overshoot so that these projects don't land successfully,
Well, then this in game development, I mean, especially I've been in the industry for 20 plus years, and been a lot of projects that have been late and have failed and all sorts of stuff. But Luigi, it's just overly ambitious. It's the simplicity of connecting to your user. And so I was working on these slides, and I thought like consumer relationships. It's like focusing on that. And do you think that that over time, like maybe we'll call it the Roblox, Fortnite generation that are coming up, but do you see brands actually thinking it's not just about access to the metaverse? It's like, wow, we have this whole new set of users coming into us. How are we going to respond?
Yeah, absolutely. And the metaverse is not really one place yet, as a lot of people here listening know, and that's why I think you've called this podcast session Road to the Metaverse, right? Because, spoiler, we're not there yet. We're on the road there. So, and I think the important thing about that is Roblox is Roblox. There's a weirdness that you can embrace on some of these platforms. And that's true of that Duolingo project that I presented, where you can actually lean into a certain platform and say, hey, this audience loves building things. They love game jams. They love wearables. They love a particular dynamic. Let's look at that, as opposed to a Decentraland, which might be something where we're using Unity, we're building assets, we're dropping in, and we're doing a more guerrilla type approach. So yeah, tailoring the approach to the platform. I can't wait until this is all more interoperable and you can swap one thing to another thing. Whether
you beat me my next question, by the way. that was definitely it. Interoperability.
Let's put a bet on how long that takes. But I think, we are seeing positive signs across the industry, I think, of people building standards groups, trying to look at what those formats would be. And I think it's a choice on the platform's part to be how open or closed do they want to be for whatever given reason, and what's that roadmap. There may be a platform that wants to be open, but it's going to take them 12 months, 24 months on that roadmap to get there. And actually I think it would be interesting to see, what are we on today, August 2022. Let's see where we are by August 2024, 2 years from now, because there is a lot of heat around interoperability and opening up. So curious to see how that goes.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like even on the industrial space, there's a concept we call it like meta twins, which is like interoperability between different digital twins. And the fusion and opportunity when you start combining data sets, you're like, there's a lot of like new possibilities and that kind of come out of that. And so I think that's also the really interesting point is, and you mentioned Ready Player Me, who I am also huge fans of. I think it's an amazing startup, but they're solving that problem. So here's another question for you. It's not just the work you're doing, but there's a partner ecosystem that brands are going to have to adapt to that you're going to be introducing because you can't do everything. Guess what? Uni can't do everything. So how do you think about your partners that you pick and as you go into on this road?
We're lucky if we get to work with all the amazing partners out there. That's not just a stock answer, it's true. And I think we're working feverishly to work with all the partners that are jumping into that new Web3 space. There's a whole bunch of new logos and new names cropping up in these spaces. So sometimes you have to kind of work through the minefield a bit of like who's who. But once you figure it out, obviously people of different size and different interests bubble up. But yeah, all the major brands we're talking to are interested in that of course. But what I will say about partnerships is this space is really, really great for partnerships in terms of it's partnership friendly. We're seeing what would have taken 6 months to a year to come together, taking weeks or months just to click because people are so excited about it. So getting someone to come together, bring their different brands together and then jump into a space, that's an advantage here.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Jeff, welcome.
Well, thank you. Fantastic discussion so far. I had to jump in a little early because we're getting a lot of questions. So I wanted to make sure that we tried to address as many of those as possible. General themes of the questions have been around the measurement of success, applicability across different industries, the role of ads and advertising with the metaverse, where to get started. So I'm just going to dive in. And Tim, I'm going to start with this one for you. How are traditional consumer goods companies evaluating the success of their projects? Are they looking to solely generate revenue on the digital products, or are they aiming to have it translate to real world purchases and brand building?
I would say it's both, absolutely. And it depends on who in any given client group you're talking to. Of course, if you're talking to the CFO, they're going to be more revenue focused, right? On how to, and rightly so, because they want to be able to use these new formats to generate revenue and bring more budget back to these exercises. But of course, we are shifting here from a marketing budget and a marketing mindset through to these new revenue streams. So I think what we're seeing is it's starting with a marketing POV, meaning how do we get to our audience? So therefore the KPI would be how many people are showing up in any given channel, and metaverse being a new channel in a way, alongside social or film or live stream or web or mobile, these other more known channels. So that's usually our approach is, yes, there are certain virtual worlds, metaverses that have audiences, but it's not necessarily a slam dunk, right? You got to work hard to get to the audience in the right way. So augmenting that with social and film. So I'd say the CPG clients and product clients are interested in all that traditional stuff and all this new side by side.
Great. A lot of the discussion so far has been around B2C. I know that there's a lot of work in the B2B space as well in the metaverse. Could you speak to a little bit what your company has done in that space and what you're seeing?
I mean, a lot of these projects are B2C, just by default. It's interesting. Yes, we do talk to clients about enterprise and R&D and sales tools and sales dynamics, which is all more B2B. But a lot of the work I'm talking about today is straight B2C, because it's about getting to new audiences. It's about getting to these younger audiences. Truthfully, that's 50% of the briefs or conversations we're having are, okay, a lot of people 25, 30 and under are more likely to spend time in these spaces than be watching the ads we're throwing out on TV. So let's take what we're doing to these spaces. And you can't just show up with a traditional ad in these spaces, it has to be tooled in the right way, in a genuine, authentic way, you know. So yeah, did that answer the question, Jeff?
It kind of did. I'd like to throw this to Ryan as well, just because I know that your team has done a lot of B2B work. Where do you see metaverse fitting in there?
Well, it's interesting because I just spoke about it the other day, actually. Right now, I think there is, for every job opening there's, this is labor statistics, there's 0.5 of a person looking for that one job. So there's just a huge skills shortage globally. And you think B2B, what's their biggest problem right now? They don't have enough people. So Salesforce, they don't have enough salespeople. They don't have enough marketing people to actually get the work done. And so these companies are coming in and looking like, look at the metaverse. Well, it's actually a big problem solver. It's like, how do we use these technologies from real time, product configuration tools, digital twins of operations, like all the industrial stuff to figure out how do I actually remain relevant as an organization and keep up and actually figure out how to actually control inflation and respond to my customers in a meaningful way. So the biggest problem that I think people run into is like, holy cow, I can't meet the demand I need. I need to rethink my technology and how do I drive more productivity? Where I think, listening to Tim is like brands are thinking, well, how do I connect to this brand new ecosystem of users in a new meaningful way? So I think it's like the more pressing problem that these businesses have.
Fantastic. Let's stay with you, Ryan, for a second. Another theme of the questions that have been coming in is applicability across industries. Specifically, and I know this is a space that you've focused on a lot recently, and you touched on this earlier, is financial, specifically banks and insurance. But also people have asked about the hospitality industry, hotels. Can you give kind of a broad answer to how you see metaverse applying in financial services and hospitality, et cetera?
Well, I think it comes down to number one, it's about how do you connect to your customer wherever they are. So really rethinking that customer experience. And one of the big things is, very simply, does it make sense to go have a personalized experience and walking into a teller? Well, probably not anymore. Like I think and if you do actually go to the physical space, how do you make it way more from a user experience standpoint, like much more tailored to you? And so I think there's this process that's going on, at least on the financial side, is like there's just a lot of opportunities on how do I engage with my customers. Again, I go back to that problem of like productivity is really thinking and engagement. And then on the hospitality side, I mean, I was just on a presentation just before this and getting a demo of like training. Again, it goes back to the staffing. It's like training and onboarding people in virtual experiences in a meaningful way, and especially around safety. So we think of these experiences that are multiplayer and using analytics to drive better outcomes for business. So I think it really is applicable across industries. But happy to give us a call. I'm sure Tim and I will take either of those conversations to go deeper, because the brief is, who is your user? That's where you need to start.
In fact, that's a great note. As I said, this is our third webinar. We've had multiple people reach out to Ryan directly through LinkedIn. If you do see an opportunity that you'd like Unity's help or MediaMonk's help, feel free to do so. Let me throw a softball at the two of you. This was kind of a fun one. Ryan and Tim, could you explain if MediaMonks is a competitor to Accelerate Solutions, or do you collaborate and complement each other?
I'll let Tim answer, and then I'll pile on whatever direction he takes it.
Competitors? Never. No, we're open and agnostic and a collaborator. Actually, Wesley, who's the founder of MediaMonks, has this term that I like over here, which is low to no ego, which sounds a bit weird, but actually what it really means is, leave your ego at the door when you're collaborating on projects. And that's been a really good ethos over here that I've seen work really well, because actually sometimes the race to try and own these spaces and own these innovation projects gets in the way of actually doing the best work. So I would say collaborative mindset, partnerships.
Yeah, and building on it, it's so critical. Is at Accelerate, I said, I was actually just presenting internally. It says our job is like, I want people to copy us. We're trying to showcase like the initial, like I call it like the templates or your fingerprint of architecture and ideas that whole industries can follow behind. There's more work. There's going to be hundreds of millions of people in this new creator economy. We're just at the very beginning. And so I think a lot of our work is about collaborating. It's about teaching. It's about sharing lessons. And so, I mean, we were even talking about, we talked about Roblox and Fortnite, that they are not competition. They are places of innovation and creation. And those users are going to be coming to our platform and other platforms. And so, Unity is just in a really interesting part where we're just part of this massive collaborative ecosystem that is forming Web3.
Fantastic. So I gave you the softball because now I got a meaty one for you, Tim.
Okay.
So
I'm ready. I'm ready.
can you kindly share your point of view on the future of performance-based advertising in the metaverse? Do you think there will be any programmatic ad for metaverse?
That's not hard. That's not a tough one. Yeah, I could talk about this all day. We have a whole bunch of folks working on performance ads over here at Media Monks, all kinds of different flavors of it. But I think what we're seeing is some really great startups working with new ad formats in virtual worlds. And a format that I like that might be interesting for people to check out. There's this, in a partnership mindset here, there's a company that we're talking to called Super League. I don't know if you've come across them. Super League have ad formats where it's portal based. So you're dropping in your doorway from a popular game into your content and vice versa. And there's different rules of engagement around how that happens. And it's tracked. And I know obviously within the rules of these platforms, because somewhere like Roblox obviously is under COPPA guidance to protect their audience, but within the areas that you can get that data, you're able to then move around. There are traditional things like billboards and ad formats, and those are really useful for getting parts of the campaign in and out of these spaces. But yeah, it's short answer is it's still early, but we're keen on performance and tracking and success-based ads. But I think we also need to be wary of not just loading up these worlds full of ads, and the users don't want that. No one wants to replicate the banner chaos that happens around a mainstream site in the metaverse. So these portal formats are interesting because they're actually helping you move around the space, and also they drive revenue.
Great. I'm going to give both of you a break because there's a question that I can actually answer.
Awesome.
A lot of folks have been asking where they get started, how they can learn to code with Unity in the metaverse. We have a sister series to this called the Creator Series of Road to the Metaverse. We have monthly episodes that are designed for developers, people getting started in coding in Unity and creating for the metaverse. We also have over 750 hours of training on our Unity Learn platform. So, feel free to go there. It's a great place to start. Look at that, I answered a question. So let's go back to you, Tim. As you engage with brands, does the topic of IT protection ever surface? I'm sure it does. How do you deal with that and ensure that you're protecting the brand's IP and not putting it at risk?
It depends a little bit on the brand's maturity with their IP. And for example, if we're working with a brand that's already made video games, then they're already pretty knowledgeable about what can and can't, and they'll have already been categorizing what can and can't live in different places. If it's the opposite and it's a brand that we're working with who's never been in these spaces, then we as an agency map that out. We do risk assessments as part of our upfront on a project. We'll look at how, let's call it a toy or a product, moves through different parts of the project. But yeah, it's totally manageable in the sense that it's almost traditional IP rules about licensing and where something can or can't exist. But what I have found interesting in these new spaces is how are character and identity used. Can a character from a TV show or a film or a piece of IP, let's call it Toy Story, can Woody in Toy Story be represented just as Woody, or can you embody that avatar and now you're giving that character a different life that it didn't have before. So there's some identity and ownership stuff in IP, which is on the edge there of what people are used to.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you a question then, because building on this thread, like a digital human, I mean, is that something that you're getting more and more of, where people coming in and like, what is a digital human and how does this apply to my metaverse strategy? I think that's a question that we get a lot. I'm curious how many people are thinking of going down that road of creation.
Oh, yeah. Every year, the digital human, virtual human performance around that topic grows. And it used to be very hologram focused around like, hey, we need to get a hologram on a stage at a gig because people had seen that. But it's good to see now that it's matured beyond that. And now it's about likeness and presence. And of course, you know, in the video game industry, likeness and whether that's, you know, celebrity or talent likeness or an IP or a character, a fictional character, that's been there for a long time. But the entertainment industry, the talent agencies here in Los Angeles and around the world have grabbed this because they've needed to from a contractual point of view and said, hey, how are we managing this likeness? So it's got a little easier. And I've seen it now. It's easier to scan people. It's easier to get those types of high quality fidelity assets. It's easier to get the rigging done. It's easier to have conversations around performance and even things like body doubles and like the use of performance. So it hasn't got necessarily easier budget-wise per se. It's still an ambitious thing to do.
Yes.
Yeah, it's still an ambitious thing to do because the quality and the expectation is high as it should be. But now an artist might consider their metaverse character different than their virtual concept character, you know?
Yep. I love that. I mean, that's the way I kind of talked about that, like meta personas. You can have multiple different personas, and there's this concept you can be in two places at the same time and at once. And just interesting thought. Okay, Jeff, I'm hogging the.
No, you're doing great. You're taking over my job. I love it. So there's a couple questions in here that deal with the age of typical consumers that would be the target audience for the metaverse. And the concern that is raised in this question is that brands may feel that the ages are too young, that they don't have buying power. How do you balance the fact that the reality is today, most of the consumers that are more likely to get involved are younger? When talking to brands and convince them to invest in this space where they may not see that target audience as having the power of the wallet to benefit them.
Yeah, this is another one I could talk about all day. You can imagine as an agency, we've needed to be really careful and really educate ourselves about this particularly so that, you know, for me as a senior, as an SVP, I've got to reassure a client, this is the safe path. These are where the guardrails are. And actually, it hasn't been as tricky as I thought it would be because the platforms do a great job around this too, and Roblox does a great job around this. And so there are very clear rules around what privacy information you should or shouldn't be taking from any given user. Parental controls are well figured out. So I think parents of kids will have seen this specifically with Roblox because you're given prompts of, okay, maybe you should tie these things down. Not dissimilar from any other app. You know, there's a lot of parental controls these days, rightly. And actually, the real conversation is around sets of ages. 12 and under is one thing. 12 to 16 is another thing. 16 to 18. And so a subset of this that we deal with is also what content is appropriate. You know, should you be asking a certain age group, a younger age group, to engage in a certain way? Should you be asking them to think about collectibles and wearables? Is that encouraging the right behavior, or should it be more about fun and play? And, you know, so we have right now in production a whole list of projects. Some of them are focused more on younger age groups, which are more around play. And then as you get 16, 18 and up, you can be more NFT focused. You can be more crypto focused in that Web3 line. So I think it's a case by case, you know?
Great. Probably have time for a couple more questions. Just real quick though, I wanted to point everyone to the chat. If you're not following it, there's been a couple links posted there relative to what we've been talking about. how you can get in touch with Ryan's organization, Accelerate Solutions, where you can find the Creator Series link, where you can find the on-demand training for Unity. So please check there if you haven't already. There's also a subtle tease in there about what our 4th episode is going to be. With that, let me take a look at the questions here. There's a lot of questions on how to get started. I've heard you give this answer many times before, Ryan, and I'd love to hear you give it again. Specifically, and Tim, maybe you can weigh in as well. How do I get started in the marketing agency world with the metaverse? What are the first things that you recommend doing if I'm interested in the metaverse?
Well, I mean, I'm going to softball this one over to Tim, but I mean, I say this, you always just start with your user. I think that's the key thing, and identify and how you're going to engage. And I think it's not about the experience, it's the user, and then work back to your brand. And it's a new, what I think is really interesting, it's a new body of work. It's a new field that we talked about. You're integrating game design mechanics in terms of consumer interactions. So these are new areas. So it's about also exploring your user, because your user's changing and how your approach is going to change. All right, Tim.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer. And also, there's no bad way to get started. And getting started means different things to different disciplines. If you're a producer or a project manager, you're going to be focused more around information and education and research. Whereas if you're a creative, you can dive into one of these tools, whether it's Unity or Roblox or something else, and just start making stuff and engage with people. And certainly in something like Horizon Worlds, what we're seeing is a whole community is driven by amateur creators who are just in there building a community and having fun and figuring stuff out, to the point where all the best builders of these spaces did come from that community. So I don't think you need to look at a large agency and say, hey, I've got to get a full-time staff gig and do a couple of years before I can get started here. I think you can get started today and just jump into one of these platforms and actually in a very short time become, with a humble attitude and a low ego, a lot of collaboration, you can learn a lot. There's no experts in these spaces. Anyone who's claiming to be an expert in the metaverse is, as we know, going to not be that expert by the following day. It changes so quickly. So I think that's a huge opportunity to anyone who wants to get started, that you can feel confident that this is a fast moving space that you can be involved in. There's no barriers to entry. So, and of course, just, get in touch with the agencies and companies you love and say, hey, I want to work with you, and most of them will be ready for that.
Right, just jump in. Lynette said something very similar in episode 2. Just get started. We're at time. I want to thank Ryan and our special guest Tim for joining us this month. Thank you so much. It was a wonderful discussion. Thank you all of you who attended today. As a reminder, we will be sending out the on-demand recording within the next couple days. Look for that. Apologies for the questions that we didn't get to. You do have our contact information. Feel free to reach out, and we'll follow up with answers to those questions. And obviously, would love to work with any of you if there's those opportunities. Stay tuned. We are very close to announcing our episode 4 date and guest. I think it's going to be very exciting for all of you. So thanks again. Until next time, have a great day.
Thanks everyone.